Thank you very much, Pandaji, for giving us an overview of these issues. Before I go to discussions, I think one thing that I was really intrigued to ask, when we talk of food security or food insecurity, of course, there are three pillars. There's this physical availability, then we have socioeconomic access to food, and the third one is about food absorption and utilization. So what we have learnt in the presentation, the focus is more on enhancing and increasing physical availability to production and try to see that how we can make this availability more resilient to climate change and water scarcity. So what about the socioeconomic access? Can we somehow think of some regional mechanism of improving socioeconomic access to food, whereby if we can grow in the region, fine, if we have to import, but to ensure that food is actually available and within the purchasing capacity of a common consumer.
This is for me or for the panel?
No, I'm asking you before I go to the panelists, if you like to just share some.
Well, yeah, I generally focused on the issue of, food availability rather than its stability and utilization. And I briefly touch upon the issue of stabilizations, particularly through international trade, regional trade expansion. But for utilizations, that is basically the issues of household level as well as at national level. So we can have some sort of cooperation on that issues. But again, regional effort should be focused on the issues of availability as well as on the issues of maintaining stability.
Thank you. Now, and that leads me to the panelists. I have extremely strong and experienced luminaries sitting next to me, Dr. Chadha, Fahmida Khatum, Dr. Tshering, and Pradeep Shresthaji. And because we were discussing food security, so Dr. Chadha, I know that you have been doing a lot of work on food security issues. And apart from what you would like to share, or any comments on Poshraj Pandaji's presentation, I was also interested to know Indian Parliament recently passed this food security bill, how practicable it is, knowing the fiscal constraint and the current account deficit. And is it a role model that other regional governments can adopt as well? Would you recommend it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I am absolutely prepared to answer each one of the questions that you raised. Then Panda should have been Chadha and Chadha should have been Panda in that case. But we can't reverse the roles. Let me try to get into the essence of what you are trying to get out of the speakers here. Pandaji, you are absolutely right that your main
Sorry,
present.
I'm Pandey, not Panda.
Okay, okay. In India, we say Natha Singh and Prem Singh, one and the same thing. So I will, you are Dr. Pandey.
Yeah.
So I will call Pandey ji. That will cover up the whole thing. Okay. Now, food security is an issue which has been occupying a central place in many of the countries of South Asia in varying form and content from time to time. It reminds me of the days when I was in mid-60s doing my doctoral work. At that time, India was reeling under the worst kind of food production, food supply. In certain parts of India, food riots were also suspected to be coming up. At that time, the worry was how to ward off all the issues which are now being mentioned under one description. Some people may like to call it food insecure people, some people will call hunger index, something. All these are willy-nilly expression of the same underlying concern. And that was the time, if some of the senior people will remember, that India used to go to United States with I will absolutely unambiguously call a begging bowl called PL 480, under which food could be made available. And I also still remember the discussion in US Senate. There were two senators, USA, Paddock brothers. The discussion was whether we should transship a few million tons of surplus wheat from USA to India or to some of their own allies in Latin America. What was the judgment? What was the twist of the argument? I will not like to repeat it. But something happened. You give it the respectable name of Green Revolution. It came, and India turned, I will not say overnight, but in a very short period of time, from chronic food deficit to a so-called food surplus. But as human ingenuity goes that way, after about 8 to 10 years, when our buffer stock started booming with 60 million people, 60 million tons, etc. For a short while, I was also chairman of Agriculture Prices and Commission. I still remember during that time, our buffer stock was 64 million tons. People started talking what to do with these mounting buffer stock. They used the word mounting, and the ideas were very boldly put across on official files, went to the minister. I don't know whether it went to the prime minister at that time. But the idea was, why not to start exporting some of the surplus food? You can see that our mindset itself has been alternating from a situation of chronic deficit to a situation when we started to be on our own, and then we even started jumping with the idea. But now, the last 8 to 10 years are posing once again signals of concern. And this is what Pandyaji has drawn our attention to you. I have no intention of repeating that. I would like to highlight that there are 4 or 5 major developments which have been taking place in Indian economy for sure, but I am saying in varying degree in Bangladesh, Pakistan as well. And these concerns, these developments are born out of policy complacency. I will not use any other word. Policy complacency, or the failure of our academic community, or even the breakdown of the international collaboration and exchange relations, whatever. The 5 areas to which my attention immediately goes, and which are responsible for, creating a serious imbalance between demand for food and the supply of food. Supply of food is certainly under strain. There are fears that we may not run short of this kind of thing. People go on making projection that by 2020, 2025, this will be the level of demand, this will be the level of the shortfall gap, and that becomes a nightmarish aspect. 5 things I would like to draw, whether they have been emerging or happening, particularly during the last 10 years because of this or that thing, is a matter of individual judgment, because no single development lends itself to single interpretation. I may interpret it in my view. The 2 things that you have already is land and water. They have emerged as the most crucial, critical issues. Is the first warning? Okay. First warning or last warning? Last warning. Okay. I will just mention and stop. You should have known that you are showing this flag to a professor. Professors are very difficult to control. Anyway. So, land and water. What has been happening to land? Why water resources are becoming scarcer and scarce is an issue of domestic policy regimes. They have got to be rectified. But I think far more important than land and water is our understanding of what technology can deliver. I should have drawn your attention also to a development in history of mankind called Club of Rome model, doomsday model, under which it was said that half of the humanity will die if this doesn't happen, if that. Nothing happened. We have been living, we have been proliferating our generation, etc., etc. But currently, in most of the countries of this region, they are suffering from what I call technology fatigue. And also, I am also very strongly of the view, some people may not here agree, that you cannot always go on harboring on the policy of what we call irrigation agriculture. There is a limit up to which irrigation development can take place in each of these countries. In India's case, the ultimate limit set as far back as 1976 on National Commission on Agriculture is that we will never be able to go beyond 50% of our net sown area under irrigation. We have almost reached that stage, but there is absolutely no breakthrough on the other side of the technological frontier. I have yet to hear of anything called, yes, I have seen it. I have yet to see anything happening by way of technological revolution or breakthrough on the dry land farming thing. There are other problems also, that over the past 10, 15, 20 years, because of various exogenous circumstances, marginalization of farming has become still more confined to these things. And on the other hand, if some of you would pick up Indian statistical data, you will find that net sown area, out of which food supplies come, it has remained almost frozen at 140 million tons for the last 30 years. I don't know an economy as big as India, where the annual rate of growth of demand for food would increase by 3%, 3.5%. The frozen net sown area, how will it be able to square up this thing? So, shrinking land availability and its drift out of agriculture under various pretexts, under various manners, dubious or otherwise, is also a very. I would also say that the concern for food security is genuinely based on the fact that our public distribution system, I don't know whether it is a healthy public distribution system in Bangladesh, Pakistan and other countries, but you can say anything about the weaknesses of public distribution system in India. We have tried to experiment with many ideas, many new terms, many new institutional arrangements, but the fact of the matter is that public distribution system has not been able to deliver all that was expected to be done to the poor people, to the food insecure people, whether it is in the nature of untimely availability delivery, or it is in terms of quality of the food, or even in terms of affordability by the poor people, club them together. And that is what perhaps, maybe it's a strong issue for gaining a political mileage, but you refer to it, Mr. Chairman, the recent direct intervention by Indian Parliament in enacting food security bill, under which we are told that 67% of the population, and if you cover 67% of the poverty, I would believe that the poor people of this country would be covered twice over. We have been eliminating poverty in India at such a high speed. As a teacher in the university, I have been telling them poverty should have been completely eliminated by now, 5 times at least. I don't know where does this resurfaces at all, it comes up. I hope nothing like that happens. The way that norms have been worked out, the way that safeguards are being provided in the food security bill, I hope each one of them works very well. And when we have the chance of revisiting this topic, I hope we don't have to revisit this topic also from food insecure. We may have reason to believe that now we are food secure. But in case we have to do that, I hope that India's food security bill would have shown us the right way, the right messages, and perhaps then we will have different set of argument to see how to run that. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Chadha. And actually, I had this leverage of 10 minutes because 2 of the discussants are not here. So I may come back to you again.
Please come back. But please, my request is ask that Jhanda wala to stay.
No, they have to do their duty. You please keep on doing
I'm doing my
your
duty.
duty. So now from food security, we tried to switch to and jump to this issue of climate change, adaptation, financing. We have been criticizing on this global model of climate funds and climate financing. But what about this regional model? Is it practicable, keeping in mind the size of economies, LDCs, developing countries, and various magnitude of vulnerabilities? So we have Fahmida Khatum with us, who has done a lot of work on climate change, adaptation, and financing. So Fahmida, if you would like to share some thoughts on any regional financing model that you can think of?
Very wide canvas on the topic. Actually, the topic is quite vast. I mean, climate change, water resource, and food security. For each of the component, I think we need a separate session. But as you have just, Mr. Chair, you have just suggested that I would focus my discussion on the climate change agenda, particularly on the adaptation agenda. Yes. From Dr. Pandey's presentation, we know that climate change is a reality and how the South Asian countries will be affected because they are most vulnerable, because they have a large number of poor people who are really vulnerable to the impact of climate change. Now, there are, how to deal with it, there are various ways. One is the adaptation, which has been mentioned by the chair, and the other one is the mitigation. But as far as South Asian countries are concerned, we always focus mostly on the adaptation aspect. And adaptation is needed for various sectors, all the sectors, most of the sectors, agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and also water supplies, then for the coastal ecoregions, and then also infrastructural development. So in case of adaptation, we have seen that in South Asian countries, we have a natural way of adaptation. The people who are affected by the climate change, they naturally adapt to the situation, and they're very resilient. I mean, the report yesterday, which SCAP had just launched, that also showed that how various countries within South Asia, they are resilient to various natural disasters and natural disaster-related shocks. But again, we need to have dedicated measures, dedicated plans, and policies and measures for the adaptation. We know that there are various adaptation policies in place within South Asian countries, but the issue is that how to implement those adaptation policies. There are two ways. One is the finance, which you have mentioned, and the other one is the technology, which has also been discussed. So with regard to finance, well, these are related to the global issues, because there's a global aspect to this. With regard to finance, there are various sources of finance. Finance from various governments and multilateral agencies, and then there's also the market mechanism from the private sector and various instruments. So with regard to the finance from the various governments and multilateral organizations, UNFCCC has the adaptation fund, but there are issues, for example, the fund, the global fund for climate related issues, they're biased towards the mitigation funds, and then adaptation funds is about 30% of the total allocation, whereas we know that most of the countries, be it within Asia, be it within Africa, they need adaptation because they are very insignificant contributor to the global climate change. So this is one issue, and the other issue is that there's also, I mean, as it happens with the other traditional issues of foreign aid, ODAs, that there's a huge gap between the commitment and disbursement. And unfortunately, I mean, only till the last year, it shows that only about 7% of the total committed amount has been disbursed. So you can see that how that finance is flowing to the requirements of these countries. And then now when you talk about the regional policies, regional approach to
about
it.
specifically
Yeah.
about the future of
Yes,
climate change
coming
fund.
to that, you see South Asia, they have, there's one South Asian approach to this, and there's a SAARC development fund which is dedicated to the adaptation issues, but that has not been very successful because there's a lack of coordination in terms of climate agenda. We need to have a coordinated climate agenda because though within South Asia, there are LDCs and there are emitters, who are also significant emitters within South Asia. So there's a need for coordinated climate agenda, and then one thing has to be remembered that in future, all these global funds, those will come through the regional facilities, regional entities. So that is all the more important that we have a regional entity which will channel the finance for adaptation to these countries. So this is very, very crucial. And the other issue that the market-based instruments, one of the instruments is the CDM, Clean Development Mechanism. We see that the participation of the South Asian countries, except for India, is very, very negligible. In 2012, India had registered about more than 800 projects, to be specific 881, second to China. But if you look at the other countries, Pakistan only 6, and Sri Lanka had registered 13, Bangladesh 4, Nepal 3, and Bhutan 3. So you see there's a huge capacity, because why there's less participation? One is that the investor, that in CDM, an industrialized country invest in a developing country, and they earn the carbon credits. So one is of course, the smaller market or small market investors usually don't want to go there. But also from the countryside, that participation in these projects are very cumbersome. The procedure is very long, lengthy, and there is a lack of capacity. So within the region, India can probably provide capacity support to other countries, because India's Himachal Pradesh restoration project, that is the biggest project in the world under CDM. So we can collaborate in this area. And similar case with the Global Environmental Facility, GEF fund, that is even more cumbersome, because there you need to, the host country has to co-finance, which is not possible for many countries within South Asia because they are poor. So that's one issue. And then the other issue is the technology transfer. I would make a quick remark on that. That is, we are talking about technology transfer, but it's also related to the negotiations at the WTO, that Article 66.2 of the TRIPS agreement. We want to have an implementation. This is one aspect, but the other aspect is also negotiation with the WTO, that negotiation on liberalization of environmental goods and services, which is related to the liberalization of goods, which can be, through which we can expect that technologies will be cheaper, and we can have green technologies which can take care of the various impacts of climate change. But related to the WTO, Dr. Posh's paper has touched upon the trade issues, actually. There's a linkage between trade, climate change, and food security, though it's not straightforward, but favorable trade policy can actually lead to food security of these countries. And then in the WTO, the negotiation on the trade and climate change, very often we hear that the developed countries, they threaten those countries which are not complying, or which are exempted from complying to Kyoto Protocol, that is reduction of emission, to put border taxes, or so, which can be quite harmful and which can have implications for food security within the region. So these are the South Asian, these are very much South Asian issues. These are global issues, but which can actually impact very severely to the South Asian countries. So that's why there's a need for a harmonized and also a coordinated policies in the case of climate adaptation and also climate mitigation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Fahmida. Well, now let's try going to the mountainous state of Bhutan. Dr. Tshering is here, and Dr. Tshering, when we talk of climate change, very often it is said that perhaps some of the gainers of this rise in temperature may be the mountainous area where we have slightly longish sowing season. So, from Bhutan perspective, from a mountainous farmers perspective, how do you see this rise in temperature and climate change negative vis-a-vis these positive implications of rise in temperature?
Dr. Suleri, I think the climate change and its effects have very eloquently been outlined by Dr. Pandey and good lady. I think all these issues, whether we are talking about water, food, climate change, are important for lives and livelihood. The most unfortunate part, to which they have already covered, is that all these, climate change in particular, have been brought about by our own activities. The influence of human activities is indeed affecting their lives and the livelihoods of ourselves and of our people. So what can we do about it? For instance, and these are changing the climate, we are having cloud bursts, GLOF, more frequently than probably our predecessors, our forefathers have ever seen. For example, the Himalayan tsunami in Uttarakhand, how much lives have been lost? How much damage it has done to the properties, infrastructures. They are still trying to recover from these effects. We in Bhutan did suffer from GLOF, from cloudburst, but probably not so far to the extent of Uttarakhand. Or in that matter, what you have suffered in Pakistan two years back, and lately in Afghanistan. These are the effects of climate change and directly contributable to human activities. Now, what can we do about it? Loss of infrastructure, loss of lives, livelihood. And we in Bhutan, what are we concerned most? We in Bhutan, living as we do in the fragile Himalayan ecosystem, we are all the time concerned, would there be a GLOF next time? Would there be a bad cloud burst? Because these will wash away all our hydropower projects and the plants, our infrastructure. Because of the rise in temperature, impact on the agriculture. And not only that, when the GLOF comes out, bursts out, and when there is a cloud burst, the effect is on downstream people living on downstream and the water basins. Not only in Bhutan, because these floods doesn't stay up there, it goes down to West Bengal, where there are more people than Bhutan has. It goes down to Assam, state of Assam, where every passing year it affects. And they think that probably Bhutan has released some of our dams. And similarly, I think in Nepal, a few years ago, they have suffered. I was reading from Dr. Pandey's paper that they suffered from the Dudh Koshi and Bote Koshi rivers, and so much damage has been done. And these are the effects of climate change. And that's why we in Bhutan all the time feel concerned. And what can we do? Not only within Bhutan, but what can we do together in South Asia? Fortunately, Bhutan has a policy of gross national happiness. Our gross national happiness, one of the pillars is environment, conservation of environment. And through conservation of environment, our constitution has enshrined that Bhutan has to maintain 60% of its greeneries and the forest at all times to come. And because of that, we have started 10 national parks with biological corridors, and now I was told today it occupies something like 51.4% of our landmass is under protected area. And because of this, our National Environment Commission feels that, well, Bhutan has become carbon neutral or carbon sink and carbon neutral country. And I was delighted to see that we are attending a first carbon neutral event, a conference here in Sri Lanka. But what can we do together to lower we have to concern of GLOF, we have to lower the level of the glacial lakes. That's very expensive, and it requires a lot of technology. But fortunately, SAC, at the 16th SAC summit, I think they have launched and declared to work on glacier problems and glacier ecosystem. And they have, I think, appointed an intergovernmental expert group. And I was told that they have already met twice, and that was to guide, that intergovernmental expert group is to guide the forestry center so that they can learn, they can think about grappling with the problems of climate change that affects the people living in the mountains and the mountain ecosystem. And I believe that not only that, we need more cooperation down the stream in South Asia, and we hope that we will be able to get around together and think about viable solutions. For instance, between Bhutan and India, we have exchange of hydromet data exchange on daily basis, so that when the flash flood goes down, they are warned, and hopefully at least some lives will be saved, if not the properties. And similarly, we hope that we have a group now meeting on the sub-regional level, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, and Bhutan, that they will be able to discuss this and get around it and find some viable solutions and bring South Asia to economic cooperation, greater economic cooperation and integration. Thank you.